Welcome to Heart Magic Wisdom. Today we will look into the question, why am I unhappy? I want to quickly state what I mean by being unhappy. Being unhappy is when you psychologically feel sad, bad, negative, and I would exclude from this unhappiness actual physical pain, because that is a different problem. But oftentimes there is no immediate pain and still we feel unhappy and all sorts of negative emotions. So now let's look into this. First of all, I would ask you, if you were born somewhere else on a different planet that is much more harmonious than planet Earth, how much of a problem would you think your unhappiness would be? Because you could say that your unhappiness is actually a good thing, because you have a working detector for whether things are good or bad, and the detector is just detecting that you are living in a very non-harmonious environment and many things are going wrong. So now the detector is just reporting to you that things are not very great, not very harmonious, and therefore it's giving you this information as a feeling, which would then be a negative feeling, which we then would describe using words as being unhappy. So from this angle, the question is, imagine the best possible planet that you could imagine, where people are helpful and people are just and everyone grows up with parents that are supportive of the wants and the desires of their children, and there is no shortage of food or space. The people who make decisions make sensible decisions, and they have the best interest of the people as their own best interest. So in this case, how would you feel about life? How would your outlook be on the future? How would your internal state be? And I think it would be a very positive one, because you need some sort of problem to feel bad. And if you see the world through the story that everything is in harmony and there is no threat to this harmony and people care about each other and they will look out for each other, they will have each other's back, then this story alone will result in the emotions of feeling positive. And sure, I guess even in a harmonious situation, sometimes things don't go as planned, and then you would have negative emotions to report to you again that something is not ideal. But then you would think again, well, I'm thankful for this negative emotion that is informing me about the fact that something is not ideal. But here on planet Earth, a lot of things are not ideal. So this system of telling you that things are not ideal is being tested to its limits, and it can go so far that now you are overwhelmed by this constant noise of the detector of whether things are good or bad. So now that you are kind of paralyzed and the detector itself is starting to be the problem, because the detector is overwhelming you with this information, which is things are negative and therefore here is the negative emotion, which translates to feeling unhappy. But notice also that the emotional detector doesn't react directly to the situation only. It also reacts to the story that you tell yourself about the situation. And if you can find a positive story, then the emotions will be much better. So let's explore what kind of positive stories we can tell ourselves. And by positive stories, I don't mean lies. I mean stories that we can agree on, that are factually true. But you can always tell different stories about the same situation, most famously known by discussing whether a glass is half full or half empty. It's the same fact, but you can look at it from different perspectives. And you can do this for any given situation in your life as well. So let's say you got let go from a job that you actually liked working at. Now you can say, well, this is a horrible story because I'm losing something that was important to me, and now I have lost it, and now the situation is worse. But you could also see this story as a positive change in the sense that there is now new opportunity on the horizon, and maybe you will find a job that is even much better than the one you had before, or just life will take you along a journey that's much more interesting than if you would have stayed at the same job for 20 years. And now, if you imagine how it would feel inside your body at the same time while you are reflecting on the situation and you are listening to yourself telling this story, then one story would produce negative emotions and the other story would create positive emotions. And in this case, you have the power at all times to tell yourself either story. The problem might just be that you don't believe the good story, so now it feels like it's a lie. And there are all kinds of new age concepts that speak about belief in the sense of you have to be delusional about it, just narcissistically believe it, and the act of believing will make it happen. It's like manifestation. But this is not what I mean. I just want to point you to the phenomenon that whatever happens, then you tell yourself a story about what this means, and then from this story you will receive emotions that match this story. And I want you to check whether this is true or false, so you know for sure. This is something that you can check yourself while you are going through life. Just when you feel a negative feeling, look at the thoughts you are having. The thoughts tell a story, and see whether or not the emotions match the story. And at other times, if you are feeling very happy, look at the thoughts you are having and check whether the story the thoughts tell you are very positive, in the sense that they tell you, for example, that you were lucky to be here at the right time, in the right place, and things just worked out perfectly. So let's go back to the question. If you are in a situation and you feel negative emotions, how can you tell yourself the positive story if you don't feel like the positive story is true? Well, it's a gradual process, first of all. It's a skill that you can train. And it's, once again, I really have to emphasize this. It's not about being delusional. It's not to fake it till you make it. It's to be very truthful about it. And what you do is you don't try to shift the entire story at once if you don't have training in this. What you do is to just focus on things that are positive. So if you have the story of, well, I was let go from my job and I dislike this experience, I'm unhappy about it, then instead of working with this story directly, you focus on something that you feel positive towards. So let's say you are outside and the air is great, then you take some time to breathe in the air and you feel how the air feels. Let's say the air feels great, then you think the air feels great. And now this alone is a small impulse of a positive emotion. And you try to get some sort of momentum going of these positive emotions. So you maybe do the air thing for a while, and maybe you see parents with their children and you see them being very loving towards each other, and you think, well, this is how a family should be. That's really great to see. This is a beautiful sight. But you can also do it with small things. You could, in the worst case, let's say you see someone who's happy and your inclination would be to think, why is he so happy? You could say, at least one of us is happy. So you changed your thought from all the way negative to just a little bit less negative. Whatever kind of step you can take to change the perception of how you look at it into a more positive way is fine. The important thing is that you actively look for something where you can find a positive story about it. And then you do this practice for more and more things. And then when you switch back to your original story that maybe still feels heavy, the story of I was let go from the best job that I ever had, and now I don't have it anymore, and I will never get such a good job again. Now maybe you have access to, well, maybe it was the best job so far, but there is a slight possibility, even if it's very minuscule, that I could maybe get in some possible timeline a job that's as good as this again, and maybe even 1% better, or whatever you can tell yourself that is now a slightly improved story. I don't want to make this video too long, so I will leave it at this method. There are millions of examples to be made and nuances to be discussed, but for now this is the basic concept, and I hope you can benefit from this information. Thank you for watching and see you soon.